My name is Sohail Iqbal. I'm a CISO at Veracode. Veracode, for those who don't know, we are an application security company. We are in application security domain for past 17 years. We're primarily a SaaS company. When we talk about application security, we talk about the inception of the code to all the way down to the runtime. So you'll see me continuously walking back to my laptop, hitting next because the clicker is not working, so just letting you know the logistics of it. But other than that, hopefully it should be good, and I'm assuming everyone is able to hear me in the room. Good. So my topic, a little bit about myself. Again, I've been part of this industry close to 25 years or so. I've been in a leadership role, Dow Jones, Wall Street Journal. I was global head for their operations, MarketWatch, Ziff Davis, New York Post, CarGurus, currently at Veracode for past 3 years, and there are plus 40 different other brands which I managed during my tenure. So the topic I'm going to talk a little bit about today, just to give you the glimpse of it, is going to be the crossroads of Gen AI and application security. But I wanted to start level set with Gen AI first. We're hearing a lot about Gen AI. Past 6 months, it has disrupted the industry like anything. The subscriptions, if you look at it for those OpenAI platforms, Gen AI platforms, it's in millions in no times. And this is groundbreaking. We are coming across innovations, new things, new productivity. We'll talk about those. But I wanted to make sure that I walk away from also establishing that there are some risks associated to it. Every room where I've walked in past 2, 3 months, 4 months, Gen AI has started to become a topic. It became a predominant conversation regardless what your original topic was. So why not, talk about Gen AI, talk about the benefits? Absolutely, we are going to go see through those productivity, those good stuff. But also, I think if Gen AI is a paved road where the businesses, personal and professional lives will accelerate, at the same time, we need to talk about a little bit about the safeguards. We need to talk about what exactly we need to keep in mind. What are the risks it can impact as a society on us or as a professional? And again, my domain is specifically application security, so I will not go towards any dark side of it. I'll try to stick to what it can bring to the application security and how we can kind of steer that in the right direction. And using that model, we can also apply that to other Gen AI practices which are happening across different industry segments.
I am not Morgan Freeman.
And probably you're not able to hear this voice either.
Well,
So since I'm going to skip this video, you're supposed to hear that voice. Again, it's a deepfake video from Morgan Freeman. He talks about a little bit how some of these Gen AI and these new capabilities are, and you probably have seen it a million times. It's been around on YouTube forever. But the idea was that when we looked at Gen AI, we predominantly talked about the senses, right, through which. So what has changed in last 6 months, a year, that all of a sudden everyone started to talk about Gen AI and we started to hear about it? AI is not new to this market, to this industry. Specifically, if I talk about security market, we've been using artificial intelligence from past decade or more. Talk about from malware analysis, talk about from correlation in SIM platforms, talk about other doing any kind of analytical work. Not Gen AI, but the AI was a part of it, right? Even in the healthcare industry, they've been using AI for a long period of time. There has been robotic surgeries. There has been all sort of thing, coming up the analysis. The Gen AI, the key difference is just the interactiveness, the generated part of it, the way you are able to interact with it, the way you're able to get a response out of it, the way you're able to infer and predict, right? These are the boundaries which has been broken now. And we will see, with the time passage, we will see a more and more advancement within that field And what we see a world today, it may look very different a year from now or a few years from now. So I'll skip this video. If anyone is interested, just Google it and you'll be able to see it. But the idea was just to drive the point home that how the Gen AI is being built very closer to the senses, which has been the paramount for the humankind. So a little bit about where Gen AI is being used. What are the benefits of it? What are sort of the pros of it? We are seeing industry using it for wide scale of bringing efficiency to their automation to their fields. New productive ideas are coming out of this generative AI models and tools. And again, we'll talk about the industry segments and vectors in a later slide. But it's not just the automation part of it that is able to replace some of the jobs that we commonly hear, and that's the risk and fear. But it also allows you to do it in very efficient ways, the same stuff which we've been doing it in a little bit clunkier way, right? Time consuming. Now you're able to do those things in a matter of minute or second. And we'll talk about a few examples in that sector as well. It is enhancing the creativity. We always talk about the out-of-box thinking. It has made our box a lot bigger now. Out-of-box or in-box, but it is able to correlate so many various signals that we are able to come up with new ideas, new brainstorming, new data points, which are helping us to create and see things which we hadn't seen before. Improved decision making. How do we make decisions? We make decisions based on the information we have. The more information we have, the better decisions we make, isn't it? So imagine now you have the entirety of all the data points related to the decision we want to make. It will make our job a lot easier. We will be able to get to, hey, what's in our favor, what's not in our favor, what's at odds. We will be able to do all that based on the signals the Gen AI tools will be able to provide us. So let me give you one example. And this is a real example. Again, there's a link and everything down below. A mom whose son had a rare illness. She had seen 17 different doctors over the period of 3 years and couldn't come up with a treatment plan or diagnosis required for the boy. I can imagine the situation of that mom. Fed up, frustrated, not getting any conclusive kind of the treatment. So she decided to took the MRI images, medical images, all that data, and submit it into the ChatGPT. ChatGPT was accurately able to diagnose and provide a treatment plan. The boy went through surgery and is recovering well. That's remarkable. Think about it, right? This is very close to all of us. In our homes, in our society, in our communities, we see this every day, right? Mistreatment is, again, I don't want to talk about the dark side of it, as I promised, but it is a common phenomenon. It happens all the time here, right? Patients are misdiagnosed. They get the treatments are not as accurate as it should be. And ChatGPT, a technology coming along and helping in such a remarkable way that it's giving a life and cure to someone who has pretty much, for past 3 years. If you've seen 17 doctors, I think you have exhausted pretty much all your resources. So from that aspect, it's amazing. So Gartner decided to do a poll. They asked, and I think the sample number is somewhere below, but they ask in general, let's generalize this, that how many of us think that the Gen AI benefits will outweigh its risks? 78% of us said yes. And I'm in one of those 78% personally, right? And rightly so, right? There is so much which is happening within what this technology, what this breakthrough, right, is bringing it to us that we haven't even measured the boundaries of it. We are talking about from industry to industry at a very high level. We haven't even got to a micro level yet, how it will transform not just the business world we live in, but also the personal lives, right? How do we do things on a day-to-day basis? How do we interact with things? How do we communicate? It's all going to, so there is plenty, and plenty from a positive standpoint. I believe this Gen AI will make our life, will bring that sort of the added advantages for us to handle our life cycles a little better. So we talked about a little bit what are the good stuff which it's bringing to the life. And as I said, if Gen AI is a paved road where it allows us to accelerate our business decisions, productivity, creativity, in the entire ecosystem, our personal life, from health standpoint, from other challenges we see in life, the decisions we need to make with respect to, used to be a time, you take your kid and you go from college to identify which one is better and which one is, it's at your fingertips. You want to go travel to another city in the world and you had to really call up friends. Do you know any good restaurant there? Where should I stay? What is the crime rate? Everything on his fingertip. You submit your question, you get your answer. Your life, it certainly becomes a lot easier. But let's talk about it. As I said, there has to be some guardrails. There has to be some safeguards, right? That's just the nature of it, to ensure that we are heading in the right direction and we do not have any unwanted outcomes. So let me level set. Gen AI, how is it doing all that? Is it doing some magic? Not really. It's the data. Where does this data came from? This data came from us, real world. And we all humans, in general, we have what? We have bias, we have tilt, we have polarity, negative, positive, right? We interact with that, we have perceptions, right? Assumptions, all sort of things, right? If that's the data which is going in, and this machine, this poor machine is learning from that data, it is going to give you the attributes which exactly we exhibit as a humans in our life. So this data is going to have some bias. The system, the Gen AI, is going to have some bias. At times we are inconclusive, right? So does this system. It's going to have some hallucination, inconclusiveness. It has going to, and not every time when we are asked, regardless how much information we have, we're not accurate. Because our perception is based on something else, but the reality is something else, right? So sample data, the underneath, talk about it. We always talked about it when sort of garbage in, garbage out. That's not the scenario here, not garbage in, garbage out, but we gotta figure it out, we gotta worry about it, the polarity of the data which is being fed to this system. So we'll see some biasness in system. Security risk. So I'll talk a little bit, it's a security conference, so I think to make it relevant, we should talk about security risk. A lot of that stuff which was common to us, talk about phishing, talk about malware, ransomware. Are they new to us? No. But what Gen AI has done is that it has put those on steroids, right? How many of you remember the Nigerian prince promising us the inheritance, right? What did we do to stop that? What was the training material which we came up with? Spot the bad grammar, English mistakes, punctuation, look for those kind of things. That was a traditional part of the material which we give it to our employees, right? To make them to spot, beside checking the domain and all the other links and, of course, right? But imagine now you're getting a very polished, intuitive email, which will sound like someone is from, you will trust, you read it, you feel like you'll trust it, enticing you to click on it, changing those dynamics, right? So every security risk is amplified now. How? Because the adversary has also the advantage of it has the ability to take the advantage of these breakthrough technologies. It's a matter of the adoption, it's a matter of building your objectives. If it produces some risk, some challenge, we in the business field has also the obligation to build the effective control so we are able to get in front of it. Just like we did it when the traditional security risks were in the market, be it the phishing, malware, ransomware, and again, you talk about a variety of it. The complexity of, and again, let me take a step back. How we were able to identify those risks. Predominantly, we identified the risks based on anomaly, a point which sits outside our normal behavior, and we said that there is something, this needs to be investigated. That was the modus operandi, right? That's how we identified majority of. We got to look deeper in it. Let's correlate with this data and look at it. Is it real? Is it good? Or is it false positive? That's why high false positive, high kind of true. You all see that mix of it. But that was the basics of a lot of. Again, I'm very generalizing, so please don't hold me if there's any vendor sitting in. I'm generalizing, right? But that was the kind of the conceptual thought process. Find that anomaly. Find that dot which sits outside a normal circle. But what if this allows you to blend in, to blur in that dot into that? We just talked about that email, right? We saw it as a dot outside the circle because grammar didn't look right, English spelling didn't look right, a couple of things, punctuation doesn't look right, and we said that, this needs to be worth investigating it. But if that dot isn't part of your cluster which you thought is normal, as acceptable, it will be a lot harder for you to identify, right? It will blend in. So it means that we need a new means of identifying those risks. We need a new way of identifying those. Let me dismiss that meeting. Okay. Privacy concerns. We talked about, talking about privacy concerns, right? This is a major part of our society. We worried about GDPR. How many of you know about GDPR? Rights to forget, those kind of thing, right? The GPU licenses, the copyrights. The Gen AI system, it learns from its data. But once it's ingested, it becomes a part of it. It's hard for it to unlearn. It hasn't developed that awareness of attributing the licensing and the copyrights and all that. Once it has learned your PII, and the other kind of the backdraw is, again, we're talking about from the cons perspective is, it allows you to infer information. Even if your information in bits and pieces exists somewhere within various data sets, it will allow you to infer that information without your consent. You'll be able to identify and establish a API to some extent. So those concerns will become a part of the industry, which we haven't discussed yet, how it will impact the legal frameworks and all those, right? So these are another thing from the Railguard perspective, which we need to worry about it. Let's take a look a little bit, again, I just picked few, but this is the story of every industry. Every industry is there. They're already either utilizing in some extent, some fashion, or we have seen that it's present within those domains. I gave you one example from healthcare. So let me give you another one from similar domain from healthcare pharma. First of all, World Health Organization has issued a stark warning not to use the Gen AI without proper measures and risk established for the diagnosis and treatment of the patients. With that being said, there was a clinical trial study where predominantly the data sets were from white patients with skin cancer. When the same platform was used to treat patients of colors, the results were inaccurate. Right? What I'm trying to say here is the sampling matters, the data matters. And there's so many permutations in normal and real life, it's hard to overcome all of them. It's hard to encompass all of them. So vetting that data sets at the bottom, which has been composed or ingested by these Gen AI system, it becomes imperative. News media, there was a news back in, I think, 2017. It came up, Pope has endorsed Donald Trump, and even some legit news channel picked up this news until the story was debunked. And I believe in 2018 there was online video circulated of Nancy Pelosi, where she was slurring some words, acting erratically. Again, I'm just quoting these examples for my study. I don't have any political bias, or so we have seen that. We've been seeing these sort of misinformation, disinformation, elections coming next year. What do you think? You know, if we were worried about it, the previous elections, and all about the paranoia and the amount of confusion which was flying around. And mind you, I think from the slide number 2, if you recall, I worked at Wall Street Journal. I was at tenure at Wall Street Journal, so saw it very close hand. You know how difficult it was to filter out what's right and what's where there is a lot of fluff. So it becomes critical. Finance. SEC charged a company who a Gen AI generated synthetic financial data. They used that to make their company appear a lot more popular than what it was, which drove the stock prices up, and they were able to sell those stocks at a higher price. So these are real examples, right? Recently, one of the judge, he fined $5,000 to 2 lawyers and its law firm. Let them go very leniently, I personally believe. But in aviation injury claim, the 2 lawyers presented the cases or referred the cases which never existed. So think about it from the legal dilemma standpoint. They're referring to the cases which never existed, but basically what they did is that why they were the judge was lenient, they relied on ChatGPT systems to do their research. And that research gave them those cases which never existed. So again, coming down to the point which I wanted to drive, every single segment of the industry is going to have its own challenges, is going to have its own issues. They need to figure it out how to work best within their domain, from legal structure, from operational structure, from overall, from human resource standpoint. These challenges, they will be facing these challenges, and how to kind of turn their technology and their services into an effective and free of what we talked about it, basically the bias, the hallucination, and tilt, and all sort of thing. So we talked a little bit about social engineering and phishing. I just wanted I gave you guys an example of the Nigerian prince. And I wanted to drive that point a little bit. And again, we've been experimenting these kind of things within our shops for a long period of time, where we change the phishing methodology, and we see that with every little bit change, your numbers which you're hoping to reduce as over a period of time, they just prop up, because it's just the aspect of that email which, if the people haven't counted it before, they will trip on it. Imagine the GenAI tools creating highly realistic templates and sending out, purpose-built, right? We talked about spear phishing. Imagine, because GenAI has that speed and has that automation and has that capability, that it can purpose-build an email template which, based on the data which it has learned, and target you, understanding that what creates fear in you, what motivates you to respond quickly to something. So we did recently, again, not on the bottom, not exactly using GenAI, but we did one experiment. We saw that every time, for example, if a phishing email is sent from immediate boss, right, the click rate is higher. And we experimented that. We send out a Zoom meeting invite. Hey, it's an emergency. We got to discuss this. There is an issue going on. And to every employee from their boss, basically. Guess what? People reacted a lot more than normally what we are seeing. So GenAI has the ability, right, knowing a lot more about us, right? The adversaries will look forward to harvest those templates a lot more about us, which can tell them to how to craft those emails and target phishing or social engineering. One example quickly, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Social engineering, there was a recent event or incident happened where probably a deepfake video showed up on an online forwards an employee, told him that, look, I got to run, but I will send you the rest of directions on text. Next thing, on text, send him to change the routing, all those kind of thing, and then ended up in a fraud. Not a huge significant, but I think it was a $75K or something like that, if I recall. Deepfake. Deepfakes are good, right? We are enjoying it. The body doubles, the Hollywood movies, the graphics look realistic. But deepfakes also have the potential to tarnish your image, your reputation, blackmail, all those kind of things. And we have started to see those, right? It started to get harder for us to understand what's real and what's not real. And imagine if you mix that with, again, my topic is about, I'm going to come towards the application security and cybersecurity. If you mix these risks with the cybersecurity aspect of it, the businesses are going to have a lot more challenges. Malware. So how malware are impacting us? GenAI has the ability to create malware and variants of malware. If malware is detected by that tool, it will create other variants which will be undetected. It will be able to create evasive malware, knowing that what tools are able to detect, it will be able to write evasive malwares. In 2023, researchers identified a malware called LL Morpher. Every time it was morphing so frequently, so it was hard for any traditional tools to detect and block it. It was using GenAI to rewrite its code continuously. So you're going to see these kind of examples. So as we look towards GenAI and cybersecurity, if we are going to a lot more benefits and identifying, we're going to have some challenges also where the adversaries have this advantage of creating a very tough campaigns which can create an havoc. So the sooner we get in front of it, the better we will be. So Gartner did another poll and asked, which risk of GenAI are you most worried about? I want to do a similar poll in this room. How many of you are concerned with data privacy? And I'm going to sort of couple the other: hallucination, misuse, security, bias, and unfairness. Guess what? And let me ask another question. How many of you are familiar with the basic triad of cybersecurity, CIA? Confidentiality, integrity, availability. Now look at all of the risk, or most of these risks. They are negating the very two basic pillars of cybersecurity. They'll be able to compromise the confidentiality when it comes to data privacy, hallucination, and the integrity of the data. If it's compromised, the integrity is not maintained, it's harder for you to trust that data sets. The data privacy is huge. And again, we are thinking only right now, probably, and I just want to elaborate, the label is, if it's not misleading. Data privacy doesn't mean just the personal information which we have and it gets leaked from that aspect. I'm going to bring a little bit of business aspect or professional. If every vendor is using Gen AI or those type of platforms, they're looking to train their platforms on the data which is available to us. We all live in an ecosystem where we have multiple integrations. We have a third-party vendor, fourth-party vendors. Your information flows from one system to the other systems. You're left with little, which is some of the, the downstream legal liabilities, legal contracts, those kind of things are in place. But in reality, your data is flowing through from one vendor, from one integration to the other integration to the other integration. Any misconfiguration will allow your data to get into those platforms. And once those systems learn it, it's harder for them to unlearn it. A few weeks back, Microsoft accidentally exposed 38 terabytes of their own data into their Gen AI platforms. It included their own employees' Teams chat. It included their laptop backups. It included their variety of other sensitive and confidential information. So think from that aspect. We will end up building our own virtual fences for our data sets. So either the competitors are unable to take competitive advantage because that risk is the same, right? Or adversaries are unable to take advantage of it and infer information which could hurt you. So all of these risks, what I'm trying to is that we really have to start looking at this risk without the boundaries in a different paradigm. All right, so we talked about pros, we talked about cons. And as I said in the beginning, I come from the representing an application security company. Probably some of you will be surprised that 40% of the code nowadays is being written by Gen AI tools. At least that's what we are reading and seeing and hearing in the market. That's a very high number. So as we established before, if the data in real life had the bias, had the tilt, and we saw it in the results, what about this? If Gen AI is writing code, what do you think what it includes, what it has? It has all the flaws and the vulnerabilities which we've been seeing because it's trained on the same data sets. Right? So the code which Gen AI is producing, it exactly has the same representation, in same representation of our backlogs, of tech debt, which we are seeing it. A passage of time also does not help. Why? Because what was secure yesterday may not be secure today. Because there are new flaws, new CVEs released every day in a market. So that creates this problem, this fundamental problem. Yes, Gen AI is being leveraged to write code and lots of code, and it's good because where you used to get one application written in 3 months, 2 months, 6 months, whatever, depending on the size of it. Now, GenAI can deliver in no time, right? But as I mentioned in the beginning, the usability of GenAI is great, but we gotta build some safeguards. So we gotta do something about these flaws, these CVEs, which has been part of that code. So a little bit why we talk about this? Because yes, it can generate code, but GenAI can also help from the adversary perspective manipulate codes. It can poison it, right? Imagine having a bad routine inserted, injected within your good application. It can do code obfuscation also. It can make the code appears to be as complex, so it's harder for the researchers and the application traditional controls to identify what flaws or CVEs are embedded in it. Beside, again, talking about which I already mentioned a little bit about from the GPU licenses or the copyrights or third-party code, any application, we know that there's a good significant part of that code is your third-party libraries. Right? And we'll talk a little bit about that challenge in a slide or two. So I wanted to give you, so the challenge becomes is that today we are finding software security flaws faster than we can fix them. That's the reality. Why is that so? There is underlying problem with it, and I would like to talk a little bit about that and spend about a minute or two on it. The dilemma is that we sort of tried as an industry, when we say we as an industry, try to get in front of this problem by saying that train the developers to write the secure code. That's the mantra in every single company who's doing software development or has applications. It's been day and night repeated. But let's be honest, how many organizations leave a buffer on a developer's hand, on a developer's time scale, so he can go back, retrain himself, write secure code? The reality is no, right? So they're always running from their one sprint to the next sprint to the deadlines to write the new features, release new application. The tech debt is increasing over a period of time because we already talked about it. What was secure yesterday may not be secure today with the passage of time, and we'll talk about that time scale also on a slide after this. So that's the dilemma. So 2 years ago, and I'm trying to connect the dot here on the story. 2 years ago, there was a presidential order which came through. President Biden issued the first presidential order. That presidential order specifically called about a proactive measures. If we talk about from security lens, we always talk about prevent, detect, alert, respond, right? If you really look at the nature of what was said in that presidential order, it was all preventive, proactive. What was said in it? Secure by design principle, zero trust best practices, SBOM, know what you have so you can do something about it. All proactive stuff, right? Static code analysis, dynamic analysis, know the sort of the what your application contains, what risk you're running in your environment. And then there was a momentum about shift left, right, from DevSecOps perspective. And rightly so, right, because that's where we needed to. We need to build systems which are secure by design. But the challenge which is, as we said, as an industry, shift left, secure by design, DevSecOps is the solution. And we started to realize that the DevSecOps as a function, it exists, probably exercised in a smaller footprints very well. But the reality is in larger organization, you have developers who know little security, and you have security people who knows little development and little ops, and then you have the ops who neither know security, neither know development. That's just so the silos of this operational model, which we have in most companies and more organizations, created a challenge where the tech debt only continued to grow rather than we are able to resolve it. And if Gen AI comes into this race, it's just going to put this entire cycle in that manner on a steroid. Unless we use Gen AI to our advantage and do something with it that it's able to help us solve that problem efficiently and effectively, getting in front of it and not just, So we'll again, come to that conclusion as well towards the end. So Veracode, we have, Veracode again, being a software security firm from past 17 years, as far as my understanding, probably they have the largest software security data sets which exist. So we did a jointly, a sort of, and we issued a state of software security report. We did jointly with Science Institute. I think back in June it was released. So again, I'm going to move towards what it was in this report. So let me give you a little bit few stats so you can start understanding this. 61% of the applications do not pass a WASP top 10 on its first scan. 97% of the Java applications has a known vulnerability in its third-party components. And I believe 67% of the applications never update third-party libraries after the inclusion in its code base. That's a dilemma. In just talking a little bit about, there is a first year and a half when the initial sum happened and you kind of, resolve those issues. The tech debt continues to grow over a period of time. That's what we see. As the application age, you have more flaws in it. The passage of time does impact a lot. What was secure yesterday may not be secure today. It applies on it, and we continue to see that tech debt over a period of over the life of that application. So this gives us a very kind of a stark picture from the application security perspective. And then everyone starts questioning, like, why is that so? It wasn't that obvious, historically, that this is a domain where we need to focus a lot. Because there's another thing that happened. Another stat which I want to give it to you. According to the Verizon DBIR report, in 2022, and probably there must be a similar results for 2023 also, 46% of the breaches happened from the web app or application stack. Just think about that sheer number. This is no longer a small one threat we are talking about here. 46% is a line share when we talk about the breaches. And I do want to talk a little bit about, in a sense also, again, it's absolutely imperative to have all the security controls in its place. You can't say that if I prepare for 80%, I will pass the exam, I don't need to worry about 20%. That's not the scenario here. Defense in depth, right? You need to build your controls for all of your environment, for all of the risk which you are presenting and which has the ability and capability of being breached. Let me take an example from Zero Trust for the organization who are implementing. So Zero Trust as a part of that presidential executive order, whole momentum, kind of the market got into the gear and started implementing it. There are 5 basic sort of, the practice areas which we talked about it when we talked about Zero Trust. We talk about identities. We talk about network controls. We talk about endpoint devices. We talk about application workload, and then we talk about data. But the entire focus and scope, if you've been involved in part of the market and seeing it, it was entirely on the first 3 set of it. Identities, network, certifying endpoint devices. And rightly so. I'm not undermining them. They absolutely should be the first one and imperative. But we kind of put, again, the application workloads went on a back burner. However, the threat level, the number of breaches which are happening, it's increasing at a rapid pace. Why is that so? The reason being is that if there is a vulnerability in your web app, there's a very little other traditional controls can do to prevent you. If there is an RC, you can have WAF in front of it, but we know how effective those are, right? So there's a very little, there is something else will stop or stand in the way for your adversaries to breach your environment. So it becomes super imperative that we should think about our application security stacks from a risk perspective and do the needful. And especially when we know that this particular landscape, even if you don't do nothing, over a period of time, it will be harder and harder to fix those flaws and vulnerabilities. Why? Because over a period of time, not only this code stayed as it is, you have introduced many integrations, you have added many other complexity. And maybe the original talent is no longer around who wrote the code, and now everyone is kind of like, don't ask me, you know. So I've seen it, right? So it's a challenge. So, you know, again, I wanted to sort of get your focus on it. So let me shift this conversation. Again, the topic, as I said, promise I'll take you to the crossroads of Gen AI and application security at some point, hopefully towards the end of this, this speech. So I wanted to give you, shifting a little bit Gen AI with respect to the application security. So this is a study from the NYU. They submitted by close to 1,700, 1,689, whatever, Gen AI. And they noticed there is a 40% of those contained vulnerabilities. Think about this, where those vulnerabilities came from. From our data sets, right? Those vulnerabilities came from our data sets, right? And again, the passage of time is also. Time check. All right, I'm going to speed up a little bit. This is a study done by Stanford. The trained programmers write more secure code versus the Gen AI code. At least that's at the. But the people tend to believe the system generated or Gen AI generated code more than the problem. We tend to believe and trust systems more than, you know. Okay. And another one, this one was done by the Purdue. They submitted 517 Stack Overflow questions. Half of the answers were wrong. Right? 12 programmers with different levels of ability were failed to identify. So how we can apply AI to the problem of insecure code, but in a more accurate and trustworthy manner? Isn't that the crossroad? That's what we were talking about. You know, I was trying to level set. Yes, we can, right? And we did that at Veracode. What we did is that we looked at it. If Gen AI has that ability and capability, how we can turn into our friend rather than, you know, how we can turn into a machine which can help us to decrease that tech debt and help us fix that. So this is the current state. On the left-hand side, you see that there's a 70% vulnerabilities flaws which are closed manually. There are 29% which goes into the open tech debt. What we did is that, so as I mentioned originally, Veracode has probably the largest software security data sets. So we trained our model on the curated, purpose-built data set. What we didn't do is get all of it, ingest all of it. That's not what we did. What we did is that we knew what a good looked like, because that's what we've been doing from the past 17 years. We knew what a good is. So we took the advantage of knowing that what a good is with high confidence and high fidelity, and we used that in our favor to auto-fix a significant amount of the tech debt. And now there is a 17% or 18%. All of a sudden, this equation started to become solvable for our shops. Now we are able to become a partner, the security folks, as I represent the security world. I was able to go sit at the same table where the developers are and say, let's talk about fixing this. Before, they always used to see me, I just punt everything over to them and just keep increasing their backlog, right? We were not friends. We were not partners. Not partners, well, partners, but not in a meaningful way. Where now I can help them to fix a lot of it also. Right? So those breakthrough, again, from GenAI perspectives are happening. The idea is, so quick one GenAI takeaways. The advantages is, as we are going to see from industry to industry to industry, different segments. The key is that instead of using indiscriminate data, think about purpose-built, curated data set to train your models. They'll give you much better outcomes, free of bias, free of tilt, less unfairness, and purpose-built to serve your business needs, instead of just turning into a data-hungry kind of, one giant machine. So again, last slide. So what does the ML model use? So ask this question. Your vendors is going to come to you as a part of your ecosystem. Ask this question from third-party risk assessment standpoint. Hey, yeah, I understand you have the right to increase your automation efficiency just like everybody else is trying to do it. But let me understand, how do you use my data? Do you anonymize it to the point that it's not reflecting back on us? How does this becomes a commodity in your environment? So what exactly, and what else you use to train your data? So you can understand the level of kind of the impurity in it. Is any of the intellectual property being leaked? How accurate are the generated fixes? So these are the questions you should be asking from any GenAI provider when it comes to you, or any vendor actually. Behind the scene, everyone is doing something to the point. So my apology if this ran too long, but I'm open for any question, and I'm here.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Mr.
Thank you.
Sohail.